Thank you very much for participating in Ask Chuck webcast. We probably have 2 or 3 more of these to do yet before we adjourn for the end of this year and Christmas break and come back in January to start a new year. So I'm very glad to accept your questions by email, Twitter, or Facebook. Thank you for participating. We usually answer a couple questions orally, and then the questions that we don't get to here, we'll respond in mail or email. I'll go to the first question. Maureen from Des Moines asked, weren't you one of the Republicans that is trying to can the jobs bill? We have a jobs bill by the president that could better be described as stimulus number 2. And the reason for my opposition and most Republicans' opposition and even a handful of Democrats' opposition to his jobs bill is because we see it as stimulus 2 and stimulus 1 was an utter failure. If you remember in February, a month after the president was sworn in, we just had to pass stimulus bill, and we did get it passed. And if we didn't pass it, the president said unemployment would go over 8%. Well, within 1 month, it did go over 8%, and for the last 2.5 years, it's been well over 8%. So we figure another stimulus bill, clouded in the words calling it a jobs bill, is not going to do the job. Now, it does happen that there are some things in the president's jobs bill that we as Republicans and I as a Republican like, and a lot of Democrats like, and that would be the payroll tax holiday, to extend that for another year to stimulate consumer spending, because consumers are 70% of our gross domestic product, and if we can get consumers buying, give them the resources to buy, we think it will be very helpful. But to repeat in stimulus number 2, the so-called jobs bill, what we did in stimulus number 1, put a lot of money into public employment, that isn't going to solve anything. Because you see, governments, whether it's local, state, or federal, consume wealth. They don't create wealth. And if we really want to stimulate the economy, we have to do what we can to invest in the private sector and things of that nature. And so that's the difference between this senator and the president on stimulus number 2. Go now to Dan from Northwest Iowa, tweets, what can be done to get the EPA and the federal government to relax regulations on agriculture? I assume what you're talking about, Dan, is the most recent regulations that's going to make it very difficult for kids within a farm family to work on the family farm. I think these are utterly ridiculous rules. The Labor Department is accepting objections to them and concerns about them. So if you haven't had a chance to write the Department of Labor, you're invited to do that. They'll have to consider these objections to the rules or changes that the rules ought to be made. But and then before they issue the rules, they don't have to change them, but they may. So here's what I think is specifically wrong. Even if it exempts kids within your own family working on the farm, there are certain things that those kids still wouldn't be able to do that maybe you as a parent would feel comfortable in their doing. But where it seems like there's an absolute ridiculousness of the rules is if you happen to be a family of generations or of other relatives that are in a corporate family farming operation as opposed to just a self-employed farmer, then you won't be able to have those kids work for your family farm corporation. Another thing that seems ridiculous is, you know, in rural America, we tend to neighbor help neighbor. And so it looks to me like it's going to be impossible for the kids of one family to go help a neighboring family Maybe they're sick, maybe they've had an accident, maybe they're away on vacation to work for that family, or even work there for no wages whatsoever. And so consequently, we are doing what we can to see what we can to discourage the Labor Department from moving ahead with these regulations affecting agriculture and particularly affecting the family farmer. Then there's regulations like the fugitive dust rule. I think they've gotten away from that. There's some rules on taxing manure from cows. I think they've abandoned that one. So you can see that in some areas, the public outrage at stupid regulations does pay off. Now, I always give you a update on what we're going to do this week. We're going to start out this week with approving some nominations. Then we're going to move on to the energy and water appropriation bill. And that'll probably take up the rest this week. Thank you all very much. Encourage you to participate next week by email, Twitter, or Facebook.